Hi guys, and welcome back to Fit with T. I hope you guys are good. Now, if you've watched any number of sprinting videos or sprinting tips, I'm pretty sure you've heard the term stiff ankle, okay? And so in today's video, I want to answer the question, what is ankle stiffness and why is ankle stiffness important? And also, how can you train ankle stiffness, okay? So first and foremost, when we're talking about ankle stiffness, we're not talking about tensing up your ankle or having a rigid ankle in the sense of no movement of the joint, okay? That's not what we want. We don't want to have a joint that's so stiff so that you actually have pain or like arthritis and stuff like that. We don't really want to have a stiff ankle in that sense. But when we are talking about ankle stiffness, we're talking about your ability to decrease your ground contact time, okay, by lessening the movement of that joint when force is applied, okay? So when sprinting, your foot comes through and you strike that ground. Now, if you do not have a stiff ankle, what will happen is that your ankle will almost collapse. Just imagine that my wrist represents your ankle joint. With a stiff ankle, you're able to strike that ground and there's not a lot of movement that happens at the ankle, which means that you actually propel off the ground quicker, right? Whereas if you don't have a stiff ankle, and I like to say if you have a floppy, soft or weak ankle, then what happens is that your heel sinks and the power that you are putting into the ground is lost. Some of that energy is actually lost and you spend longer on the ground and it's not as effective, it's not as quick, okay? So a stiff ankle is all about your ability to spring off of the floor quicker, propel off the floor quicker and decrease the length of time that you spent on the ground. So think about a ball now. Let's think about a tennis ball, a basketball, any ball that you actually blow up, right? When is the ball going to be at its most bouncy? It's going to be when it's inflated, isn't it? When it's inflated and when the material, the rubber is stretched, you're going to bounce it to the floor and it's going to react up and it's going to react up again at you, isn't it? Whereas if it's deflated, if the rubber is not as stretched, then when you bounce it, it actually sinks into the ground. You don't get as much propulsion, you don't get as much bounce back. And so when you're sprinting, you want to have as much bounce back as possible, and to achieve that you need a stiff ankle, okay? You want to be able to maintain your ankle position. You want to be able to reduce the amount of movement that happens when you do hit the ground. So you want to have as little movement as possible, as little energy leakage as possible, okay? And so you want to have to train for that. And how can you train for that? How can you train for ankle stiffness? I'm going to talk about 3 ways. The first way is the most obvious, okay, and it's very specific to sprinting, and that is sprinting, okay? So the most specific thing you can do is to sprint more frequently. If you haven't checked out this video where I talk to you guys about what you need to know to be a good sprinter, some of the key components that come into sprinting, and I speak about in that video that if you want to sprint fast, you need to sprint fast a lot. That's basically what I say, right? Because it's true. If you want to get good at sprinting, as much as a lot of other things that we do as sprinters, the most specific thing you can do is actually to sprint more often, get better at producing force in the right angles, in the right direction, you know, coordinating your limbs together in the way that you want them to be when you're sprinting. So sprinting is going to be the most specific thing. So if you do want to be a sprinter, then you're going to have to sprint regularly. You need to get good at sprinting. You need to get a good history of sprinting underneath your belt for it to really become second nature, for you to really get better at doing that thing. I mean, pretty much anything in life, if you do it often enough, you generally get better. If you focus on that thing and if you focus on refining that craft, you tend to get better at it. Not everyone's going to be, let's say, the best singer in the world, but even if you practice your singing, you've got singing lessons, you'll get better at it, right? So it's the same thing when it comes to sprinting. If you practice sprinting and you practice putting together the right technical model, learning how to apply force better in sprinting faster, more regularly, you're going to get better at that anyway, right? But of course there's other things that we do to help that, which is why we don't just do track work, we do gym work and stuff like that, right? But sprinting is going to be the first thing that's going to help you to improve your ankle stiffness. It's just to sprint more to sprint more often, okay? Another thing that you can do to practice or to get better at your ankle stiffness, to learn to reduce the energy wasted at your ankle, is to do some plyometric work, okay? And so, you know, incorporating plyometric into your training, that's basically movements where you're going to have high forces and low ground contact time, okay? So repetitive jumps over hurdles. But a good place to start with this is actually drop jumps, okay? So drop jumps off of a box and then slowly increasing the height of the boxes so that you get better at learning to resist movement, resist force when you do land on the ground, okay? So you can do this with double legs and you can do it with single leg. Like I said, you can get higher in height from the depth that you're actually dropping, okay? So you want to be able to increase your ability to withstand force when it's applied, and you also want to get better at being able to do that over repetitive movements. Okay, so plyometrics and jump training is really going to be helpful when it comes to increasing your ankle stiffness. And last but not least, I'm going to say that isometric works is also really good in teaching you to be able to resist movement when force is applied. Okay, so isometrics for your ankle, knee and hip, because those are the joints that are working when you are sprinting. So, you know, I like to do isometrics for my calf, isometrics for my hamstrings, right? When it comes to your hamstring, isometrics, doing them at different angles. So, you know, shorter angle and more open angle, you know, increasing the weight as you get stronger, because when you do strike the ground, your ankle, knee and hip all do need to stabilize. And if you increase your isometric strength, then you have an increased ability to resist joint movement as well, isn't it? So it's ankle stiffness, guys. I hope this video has helped you to understand what it is. It's not about being tense, it's not about not having an ankle that can actually move or having a stiff joint in terms of the bones, but it's actually about your ability to reduce your ground contact time because you're able to react off it quicker. And why are you able to react off the ground quicker? Because you have the ability to withstand movement, the ability to withstand force when your foot is actually strikes the ground, isn't it? So if you are someone who does have weak ankles, you're like, Trima, this is great, but my ankles are very weak and they hurt when I'm trying to do any of the things that you're mentioning, then check out this video where I give you guys some ankle strengthening exercises that you can do. And if you've seen that but you haven't seen my video where I take you guys through the components that you need to make you a great sprinter, then check out this video and I'll see you guys on another Friday. Bye guys.